Welcome to the Hero Maker podcast. I'm Andrea Schreeman, writer-director EP, living in LA.
I'm Jennifer Morrison, and I currently serve as the Commissioner of Public Safety for the state of Vermont.
We are here to seek out and tell the full story of our friends who were murdered in college, Rachael Raver and Warren Fulton III.
We really need to make sure that their deaths were not in vain and that every possible lesson and improvement for the system can be squeezed from the retelling of the circumstances that ultimately led to the identification of their killer.
Hi, everybody. For today's episode, Jennifer and I spoke with three men who were part of the George Washington University baseball program in 1988. The same year that Warren Fulton and Rachael Raver lost their lives. I was completely captivated, and I hope you will be too, as Coach John Castleberry, the team captain Tommy Williams, and pitcher Clay Aldrich, who transferred into GW and onto the team at the same time that Warren did, all wove together a beautiful portrait of this incredible young man and very determined athlete that we lost in December of 1988. Here we go.
Who do you want to go first?
You?
Me? I guess I should go first, shouldn't I?
Top of the totem pole.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. But anyway, I was the head baseball coach from 83 to 89, one of the youngest coaches in Division I. I think we put the blocks for a very successful baseball program, and the guys that are on this were really a huge part of that. So with that in mind, I have no children. I've been married 37 years as of August 17th.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I left GW, went into professional scouting in 91. I've been scouting ever since. I've been in about 6 clubs, all good, only got fired once. So that's always a good sign. And then basically we moved to North Carolina, and my wife was a teacher, now retired. We're living here on the Cape. I have a house up in Cape Cod that we bought in 07. And as of yesterday, it is completely paid off. So that house is done.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And then we bought a house right before COVID down in Pawleys Island, South Carolina, walking distance to the beach, along with this house up here. So we will be snowbirding it the whole time, and South Carolina to the Cape. And we're looking forward to it as soon as I retire. And Tommy, I will be coming by to try to get a car at some point.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That was John Castleberry, affectionately known to me as Coach Castleberry. But you haven't been coaching. You said you've been scouting since 91. And which organization are you with now?
Oh, San Francisco Giants. Yes. Been with them for, if I get a contract this year, knock on wood, 15 years.
Coach, you forgot a big piece of that.
What's that?
Tell them how many World Series rings you have.
Oh, yeah. I've been pretty fortunate. I've got 1 NCAA ring, which you girls were there, I think, when we did it in 89. I have 1 Cape Cod League championship ring, won that in 86. And then I've got 5 World Series rings.
Wow.
1 with the Marlins in 97, 1 with the Phillies in 07, and then 3 with the Giants. So I'm very, very fortunate on that side of it. So it helps to work with great people.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun.
Awesome. Who's next?
It'd have to be Tommy.
All right. I go by Tom Williams these days, but my GW brethren still call me Tommy. That's how I know when somebody from GW is calling, because they asked for Tommy. Coach Castleberry recruited me to GW in the fall of 85. Fall of 84, I graduated from high school 85 and started at GW. So I was at GW from September of 85 to June of 89. Graduated on time, which was good. That was the first goal. I was actually drafted to play professionally out of high school. My first good decision was not take that offer and go to GW. I attended GW there and got a bachelor's of business administration. At the end of my baseball career there, I had another opportunity to play professionally, but Coach very wisely asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I'm not going to waste time. If I'm just a roster filler, then I'm going on to my next good decision. And that's what I was going to be. So I hung it up the last game we played at the NCAA tournament in 1989. I was very blessed and fortunate to walk into a family business with 2 brothers as partners in June of 89. I think I took a week off. and started in June of 89. I also got to play in Cape Cod because Coach, when he recruited me, said, if you do everything you're supposed to do, I'll take you there. So I did, and got very fortunate to play up there for him in 88. And then I think I made the last out in the championship game because everybody else had gone back to school and there was nobody there to pinch hit for me.
I'm not going to comment on that, but I do remember the last out being a pop-up to the shortstop. So if that helps you with the tying run on second base. I do remember that.
Well, yeah, that was me. Yeah. I played third base for Coach the first 2 years and then short my last 2 years. So I was the shortstop on the championship team in 89 and was captain junior, senior years. Since then, I've been in the automobile business, 33 years in June. So my two older brothers have now retired. So I'm kind of overseeing the Chevy franchise and the Buick GMC franchise that I've been running for 22 of those years. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, who's stuck with me all through all those traveling around years, playing ball all over the country. We've been married 32 years at the end of this year. 3 boys and a girl. I've been beyond blessed. A lot of it came from the foundation my parents provided and my brothers and sisters. And then it was certainly enhanced by my experience with Coach and my teammates at GW for sure. And people ask me today how I'm doing. I said, if it was any better, it would be unfair. So how's that?
Beautiful. Thank you. Clay.
That is a tough act to follow, I'll say, Tom. So I'm Clay Aldrich. I attended George Washington University starting in the fall of 87. I'm originally from Gainesville, Florida. I went to junior college for 2 years in Gainesville, Florida, and came to George Washington University very fortuitously. I played with someone in junior college that was from the Washington, D.C. area that Coach recruited. And I was looking for a place to play. I was going to walk on to the University of Florida. And my friend said, let me make a phone call. And he did. And long story short, I was recruited by a pitching coach who left before I got there. So I walked into a brand new environment at GW, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life. I walked into a family, not just a team. And I still treasure the relationships that I have with my teammates that I made 35 years ago. It's been a great experience for me to be part of the GW family and the program. As I said, the best decision I made going to GW because I met my wife there, who graduated in 1990 along with me. I have a degree in economics from GW. I moved to California in 1997 after getting my graduate degree from the University of Maryland. So we've been here. I live in Oak Park, California now. My wife and I have 2 boys. Jack is 23. He went to Tulane University, was drafted, and he's playing in the Kansas City Royals organization. And then my younger son, Chris, is a junior at UCLA, also playing. So I've been pretty involved in what they've been doing for a long time, but I got the foundation at GW. Taught me a lot, and I try to pass that wisdom along to my kids that I got from Coach Castleberry. So that's me.
Amazing. Well, welcome. Thank you all for being here.
I think that you guys can fill in a lot of the blanks on the impact of Warren and Rachel's murder that, we know what we felt, but to hear it from other people, particularly from grown men raising families, I think is super impactful.
So why don't we start with Coach? Because I'm imagining you're the first person here who met Warren.
Yeah, it's a, sorry. You guys talk about it and it floods just a ton of memories. And, if I get emotional, it's because of him. And
it's okay, Coach. I've already cried twice on the previous person we interviewed, so you're good.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. I had a really good cry in my office that nobody ever knew about that lasted for a long time. But anyway, so I got a call. It's kind of a wild story. And Tommy, I don't know if you were there, Clay, but Tommy was. We had just beaten Maryland 24-6, just crushed them. I mean, like a grape. So I get this call from their assistant, a guy named Tom Koleric, whose son, Adam Koleric, was with the Dodgers for a while in the big leagues, left-handed pitcher, great guy. And he calls me out of the blue and he says, hey, I've got this player that wants to transfer, and he wants to transfer to GW. Can you look at it? I said, well, I don't have any scholarship money at that time, but I'd be very interested, as you guys know, as a soccer team, to get good walk-ons or players, it's hard. You're limited because of the finances of it all. So I said, yeah, but in my head, I'm thinking, this guy couldn't play at Maryland, and we just kicked the holy bejesus out of him, and now he's sending me some stiff, probably. Well, he shows up, and he's about Tommy. Maybe you can help me. Maybe 6'1", maybe 6 foot.
Yeah, I'm 6 foot, probably
6 foot.
170.
Yeah, 170, right in there. Okay, real lean, wiry guy, and so he kind of gravitates to that class that he came in with, and that would be Greg Orlowski and Frank Terry and Clay, I think.
Gino Goldfarb, yeah. So I came in as a junior with that group, Ken Levan.
Yes. So he kind of gravitated with that group instead of the group, because he was like 2 years older. He ended up having to sit out a year because of the transfer rule. Then he played in the spring, and I used him as a pinch hitter, left-handed hitter off the bench. And I don't know, maybe he got 35 at bats, something like that. But the more he played, the more athletic I looked at him, and I went, holy Toledo, this guy, he could do, if you guys remember Ozzie Smith, he could do an Ozzie Smith somersault in the field. He could literally lift his, it was incredible to watch him. And the more he played, the more confidence he gained. And the team really took to him. It was hard not to take to Warren. He was just a great human being and a great person. So now we get to the fall, and he I don't know what happened. Both his parents are Salvation Army, but his grades tumbled a little bit. GW's a little harder than Maryland. I always tell people that. So he had to take the fall off. So what I would do with Warren, if you girls remember, we used to practice up at RFK Auxiliary Field up near the stadium. Well, we had a pretty good team, and the only position I had really that I felt was an open area was left field. And I had in my mind that Warren would compete for that position that fall. Well, now he can't play because of academics. So I bring him in the office, and I said, hey, Warren, if you happen to take a bus up there and you happen to be in your baseball uniform, nobody's around. Just saying. Don't tell anybody I said this. He kind of looks at me and goes, and he got it. He goes, okay, coach. He showed up every day, and he'd have his uniform, and he practiced with us every day. And if I'd been found out, I probably would have got fired. But anyway, I'm glad it worked out the way it did. But he played so well in the fall that we used to have individual meetings with our players. I'll never forget the meeting with him. It was kind of weird. We were down the street from the Smith Center, and he comes in to have his individual meeting. And I don't know why I didn't turn the light on. There was light coming from the window, and it was, you all right with it? He goes, yeah. So we just start talking. And I looked him dead in the eye, and I said, Warren, if we were to start tomorrow, you'd be my starting left field. And I told him, I said, now you got work to do. You need to get stronger. You need to work at it. But if we were to start tomorrow, you'd be my guy. In the next 4 weeks before all this happened, he was in that weight, and these guys can tell you better than I can because a lot of my assistant would be down there, but he was in that weight room a lot. He added probably 10 or 15 pounds, at least 10 pounds in 4 weeks. Am I right? Or
yeah,
am I wrong?
100%.
Yeah. He was
dedicated.
Yeah. He was so motivated, and it was just fun to watch. I'm thinking to myself, I may just have something here that I told Tom when I'd see him, the guy was one of the best athletes. He really was. He could really do some things that was, certain guys have that special thing, and his makeup was off the charts. So at that point, I saw a tremendous growth in him. As a human being, he was always, that wasn't even a question. I think there's nobody on this call that knew him would say that. And the same thing for Rachael too. I remember her. So there was no question in my mind the kind of person this guy.
Let me fill in a little bit what I remember, Coach. I remember when John Flaherty signed, that kind of created a cascading effect because Joe Ross was our starting right fielder the previous year. Now Joe was going to have to catch, which caused a little bit of a musical chairs in the outfield. So it was kind of a jump ball going in that fall as to where Gavin and John Glenn and Ken Levan and Rolfs and all those guys were going to fall in. And Warren what I remember about him, he was not one of your first recruiting classes like I was. There were 13 of us. And Greg Ritchie's group was a strong group, and there wasn't much in the middle. Warren and Clay and those guys came in a year behind that, and it was tough for them because the culture was dominated by that big group of guys. And Warren just wore us down. He was just going to find a way to get in. And he did it on the field and he did it off the field. I know it would have been tough for me at that age to come into that situation. And he was on an outside looking in to earn a spot. And he just wouldn't be denied. He was going to get a spot. I remember by the end of that fall, we knew he was going to play. I didn't know whether he was going to play right some, left some, but he was going to be in the lineup because good things seemed to happen around him. And when he was in the lineup, good things seemed to happen. And that's what I remember of him was he wouldn't take no for an answer. That, he would just say, what do I got to do next? And he would do it. Nobody handed him anything. He earned every spot and every at bat he got. And a lot of guys wouldn't have had the inner strength to keep persevering, walking in where he wasn't one of. He was an outsider walking into it. And to their credit, Clay did too, and Orlo and those guys that became key parts of those teams. It wasn't the easiest thing. When I got there, it was easy. You could melt in because there were 12 other guys plus me and the old guys. That was it. You had the old guys and us. And those guys had a much more challenging situation to come into, to fit in.
Well, I think it was a second rebuild. It's only 4 years. It's not like you get them professionally for 10 or 15 years. So it was a second rebuild. But for him to do, like you said, Tommy, and I think Clay, you can probably chime in better than I can. You guys were in it. I'm seeing it from the outside, obviously, and you got that coach title. So, nobody ever wants to talk to you anyway.
Right.
But I could see it just formulate. I could just see him. It was really neat. I mean, you don't see that a lot. You see it from a freshman to sophomore, and you hope the sophomore to junior, you get what you expected to get when you recruited him. With Warren, it had to happen faster, and maybe because he's a little bit older, you could just see it coming. And I mean, I'm not kidding. I was kind of excited for the year with him being in our lineup. And Tommy will tell you, and Clay will tell you, I can be brutally honest. And when you come into those individual meetings, I would tell you what I thought, and I would give you my opinion. And I think it's probably one of the reasons I'm still in the game sometimes is because my opinion is probably brutally honest. Sometimes that's probably why I always think I'm going to get fired. But it's the same thing when you're coaching and developing players. If you want to act like an adult and be treated like an adult, this is what the process is. And Warren rose to that occasion. I mean, more so than I had ever seen in my young coaching life. I'd never seen like it.
So having come in with Warren, I want to touch on something that Tommy, both of you guys brought up, which is the social aspect of a team. When you're a freshman, those freshmen tend to come in, they bond right away. They're the ones that are carrying all the equipment together. They're sharing an experience. As a transfer, when you're coming in, you don't necessarily have a bond to that group of younger guys, and you feel like you got to find your place among the older guys. And Warren, as you said, Tommy, he wormed his way in. Like, he found his niche within our family. And as Tommy can attest to, we're an extremely tight team. We had a tiny locker room in Smith Center, so that probably helps. But as soon as we left that locker room, it wasn't like people were scattering and we didn't see each other. We stayed together. Like, hey, where are you going? We're going. Let's all go eat. Let's go out, study. It was a very tight group. And I'll tell you, Coach, as you mentioned, he lived on campus. That's a real piece of the dynamic that he overcame, because you're not living with everybody. You're not there as part of the group all the time, but he made sure that he was there when he could be there. Like, he went home and he came back. He went home, he came back. I mean, he didn't want to miss it. And that's what I loved about him. Like, he fully embraced the experience. Didn't matter to him that he was a walk-on that nobody knew. He dove in with everything he had.
And that took a courage that I didn't have at that age.
Exactly. it'd be very easy to just go, oh, okay, I'm just going to kind of melt into the woodwork and nobody will notice me. But he refused to do that. He knew he'd been on a Division I baseball team. He knew how hard it is. He refused to accept the idea that maybe I'll just show up and be a bench player, right? He wanted to earn that starting role. And it was a very talented team. I mean, you had a lot of seniors. That was not going to be an easy lineup to break into. So it was a challenge that he met head on. And something I don't know if we've talked about a lot, but the financial side of it as well, Coach, as you mentioned, as a walk-on, he had to contribute to his family. So working for UPS and playing baseball and going to school, I don't know how he took that on. And we knew about it. We knew that he was working at night and trying to put some money in his pocket so that he could eat and have gas money and things like that. But I don't know too many people that have done that and stayed in school. Usually those kids drop out, and he made it work. And I think that shows the fabric of his family and the character that his parents instilled in him, and that, if you have goals, you have to work at them. And he took on more than any of the rest of us to make that happen.
I have a question. I wondered if you guys had any insight, any observations of what it was like to watch your friend meet Rachael and fall in love.
I know they were dating and I knew they were tight. And when he wasn't with us or on campus or with his family at church, he was with her. They were a package deal. Just amazing to me was his goofiness about him that I was afraid to show at that age. And he wasn't afraid to be goofy. But at the same time, to Coach's point, a fierce competitor almost at the same time. Like he's trying to hit a 2-2 slider and telling a joke at the same time. Most goofballs you're around, they're goofballs in everything they do. He wasn't. He could be goofy 1 second and the next second serious as can be. That's what always amazed me about him.
The relationship you bring up it's interesting because you think about they're both athletes. Now, I think Warren met Rachael after she had graduated. Am I correct? Or was there an overlap between their careers?
I think there was a 1-year overlap.
Right. So, and I think that's critical to their relationship, because if you think about it, you have an athlete and a non-athlete that are dating during school. The non-athlete's feelings are going to get hurt because they're not going to feel like they got a lot of the time. And so I think that's why they worked so well together, because they understood what each other had to do from a commitment standpoint to school, to their team, to their families. When they had time together, they made the most of it. And I know, as Tommy alluded to, when Warren was with us, he was with her. And that was fine. I mean, we had a large, diverse family.
Yep.
And we welcomed all teams with open arms. So she fit right in because he fit in. They formed such a great tandem that he made it easy for her to just be part of us, which is a special quality.
What about you, Coach? Do you have any recollections of?
We didn't tell Coach any of that stuff.
Oh.
He was on a need-to-know basis.
Well, I wasn't blind and wasn't old either. So I remember Rachael on the soccer team, and I remember, and I don't mean this in a bad sense, but as she graduated and started doing her teaching thing, how much she had blossomed as a woman. Just, she was, and this is going to sound bad, and I hope it doesn't come off bad, but she's wearing makeup and she's dressing a little better and she's doing some things, and you could see that in her. And I mean, I didn't see a lot of her, but when I did, I go, wow, she's really grown up. I remember when he didn't show up for weights on Monday and somebody brought it up off a weekend, I said, well, you know what? It wouldn't shock me if Warren and Rachael went and got married somewhere.
Yeah. Well, what happened was he missed Friday morning. And the consensus amongst the group was he wouldn't miss without a good reason. But we thought, knowing them, they may have just gone to the beach for the weekend. It was when he missed Monday and then they didn't show up to church Sunday. That set off the alarm bells with the team that Now he had missed Friday and Monday, and his parents didn't see him on Sunday, which was very, very unusual. Friday, we were with that concern because that would have been Warren. That would have been just like him. Coach will chew him out when he gets back, but he'll deal with it. But Monday, it was a real problem after that. We knew.
I'd like us to move into the events, what that was like for the team, the impact. But then from there, I'd like to move into what happened after that and kind of an unexpected season that came after that.
Yeah, I can tell you. And I believe it was either Monday afternoon or I believe it was Tuesday. I was living at 25th and M in an apartment with 4 other guys who were non-baseball players. And I was doing my homework at the dining room table, and the news was on in the background. And that's when I heard his name and Rachael's name. And I looked up in time to see body bags being carried out of a field. And I remember, for whatever reason, they don't do this today, but they gave the address, his home address. I ran to the drawer and pulled out our team directory, and it had where everybody lived, if you were on campus or wherever, and it matched his address. And I remember getting up saying, this can't be. And I looked, and the address was what they said. I don't remember anything other than I left there and ran 4 blocks down the street to where Joe Ross and Doug Knight were living and banged on their door. And Doug answered, and he was crying. And Joe was crying. And that's when it verified to me that this really was happening. Then I remember the 3 of us, I guess we were in some form of shock because we didn't know what to do. So we went to coach's office. If you remember that, Coach, we came to your office and gradually, we didn't have cell phones then and all that. So it took a little while, I think, for the word to get out, an hour or so. Gradually, people started, I think the soccer team, they started, where do you go, right? You either go to Smith Center or you go to your coach's office. Coach happened to be there, and guys just started milling in, and there were 6, then there were 8, 10 of us. And I guess phone calls and decisions were made very quickly in the athletic department. And then they herded us all to the Smith Center into one of the big conference rooms. And I'm not sure if Clay, you might remember, I'm not sure if we were together with the soccer team or they put us in separate rooms.
I thought it was together.
Yeah, I recall us being together at the Smith Center. Yeah, and I saw that same news broadcast, which is so weird listening to you explain it.
Yeah. I remember next we were all in there at the Smith Center. And from there, it was a blur of the next thing you know, we were going to the viewing out in Virginia. We took vans over as a team. Somebody put a baseball in the casket. It was gut-wrenching. The only more gut-wrenching thing was the funeral that followed. And to this day, I've been through some gut-wrenching things in my life now. It's in the top couple. I remember having, I guess as a captain, I was assigned to the Salvation Army's, one of their traditions is to guard the casket during the ceremony. And we took turns every 10 minutes or so, one on each end of the casket. It was all I could do to stand up and not fall over. That was the first time in my life, it was just overwhelming grief. You're standing there looking out at there's a couple hundred people, all in different forms of anguish, everybody. And it was just overwhelming. And I'll end with this. The other takeaway I remember, we had a memorial service on campus, and I came out of there and a reporter stuck their microphone in my face and said, "How do you feel?" That was my first taste of distaste for the media, because I was old enough to know they really didn't care how I felt. They were looking to take advantage of the situation. And I looked at them and said, "How do you think I feel?" and walked away. And you couldn't get away from it. It was the front page of the paper. And then at the funeral, there were cameras everywhere. It was very intrusive. they should have been more respectful of what we were going through. That was just my takeaway.
Coach, did you know when they showed up at your office, had you already gotten the word?
No, I did not know. And I didn't even know how to react. It sounds kind of weird.
You weren't much older than we were, really.
No, I know. No, I wasn't. But still, I'd lost my father when I was 22, when he was 42. But this was just so different. And all I tried to do, and whether I did it right or wrong, was just to kind of be a mature voice in the room and say, look, you guys are going to handle this thing individually, like Tommy just said. I'm sure Clay handled it different. Everyone's going to have their own way on how they handle things. And if you guys remember, we would have these, and I'm not into it, so it's kind of hard for me but we'd have these meetings and we'd have counselors come in and talk to us, and grief counselors. And I knew I'm sure there were people that needed it, but I was kind of one of those people who said, sometimes the best feeling is to be alone and figure out what's right. So I tried to guide these guys. I think I did the right thing. I hope I did the right thing. I will tell you this story. You're not going to believe it, but they almost didn't give us the vans to go to the service, the baseball team.
Wow.
I went into the office and they go, well, it's against the NCAA rules. I looked at the person in charge, and I'm not going to use the name. I said, if it's not in my box by 3:00, the van keys, I'm going to the Washington Post and I'm going to crush this athletic department. So they better be in my box. And if you can't call the NCAA again, anyway, the vulgarities that came out of my mouth, I can't say, but at 3:00, they were in my box. I was shocked that would even be a question.
Thank you and you were probably like acting out of impulsive fierceness, defending your team. And I would like to just take a moment and get Jen's feedback, also and Clay's feedback, in terms of the type of support that you received from the university. And if we can send a message, which 30 years later, that hopefully some of these institutions have things in place for tragedies like this, but any takeaways that we can provide our listeners for how a big organization can support kids at a time like this.
Clay, you go ahead.
Yes, counselors were offered, and there was an attempt to sort of bring us together, but I feel like we wanted to take care of each other. And yeah, we're 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, but it was hard for me to believe that someone could help me get through this without having experienced them themselves. I remember after that meeting where the soccer team and the baseball team came together in the Smith Center, I remember leaving there, and a group of us went to my house, or the house that I was living in, with Paul Fisher, and it was right across the street from the Smith Center. And I just remember that being, a lot of us crying, but just trying to make sense of it all. And of course you can't in a moment like that. But I felt like we were so self-reliant there that we weren't looking to the athletic department to guide us through this. Coach, you were guiding us through it. And God bless you for doing that, because nobody prepares you for something like that. When they hire you, well, you're going to, you got a team, you're going to, run practice, you're going to play games. They don't ever say, hey, there may come a time where you have to take your team aside and tell them that you've lost one of them. I don't know how you got through that, but thank you for getting through that and showing us how to deal, because that could not have been easy. We got through it. I mean, Tommy, you were strong enough to stand up there like Joe and Gavin and those guys, and you set an example for the rest of us. And that was the character of our team. I mean, we had a lot and we had each other. And that was the most important thing.
Everybody processes sudden traumatic death in different ways. I remember being happy that I had something to focus on, i.e. the exams. So I think that while some people would say, whoa, I can't do that right now, other people might take the opposite tact. So I'm not sure there's a right or a wrong takeaway from that piece of it. I remember the first time I felt, again, it comes back to what we talked about in the last segment, Andy, about the intense need to want to be able to do something, to be able to be helpful. And I remember that the on-campus memorial service where Kate and I, as captains of the team, were integral to like being part of that. And Kate and I tending to the younger players on our team who were scared all of a sudden, and Washington seemed like a very scary place now. I remember that being the way I felt that I was helping our team. So I do know that we got vans to go to Rachel's up in upstate New York. So maybe it was Coach.
Yes.
Maybe we have Coach Castleberry to thank.
I don't
but
know
I know
about that.
Adrian and Cheryl drove vans, and they were the GW athletic vans. And I have to tell you, it was a really long drive, and
bet.
it was not comfy.
No, I bet.
To try to answer the question that was asked, what could universities or big organizations do? To what coach and what everybody has said is that every situation is unique. Every situation is different. And probably the answer is, I think what Clay was describing is we felt like the counselors were cookie cutter solution to a situation that was not a cookie cutter. And to what coach said, 25, 28 guys on a team and 20 some girls on a soccer team, that's 50 some people plus coaches. Everybody processes it differently. So the answer, I guess, if you're trying to give an answer back to a big institution, is you do whatever is necessary, whatever the person who's in need asks for. Vans to a viewing, whatever. There's no, you draw up okay, what would have been the perfect solution to this situation? Well, the next situation is going to be different and will need to be handled uniquely because they're all unique situations. They need to be a little bit more flexible and more human at times. To finish what Clay was, we looked inward, and that is a credit to Coach. He put us against the world. And I know that's cliche today that everybody says that, but we really did believe it was us against the world. And it galvanized our team to such an extent that I don't think the championship happens without this event. And I say that because it's hard. It's hard to win a championship. You know, the good players have to play well. The average players have to play over their head. And it all has to take place in a space of a week at the right time.
And there's also there's also like the wind has to be blowing in the right direction.
And you took the words right out of my mouth. And the ultimate piece is you have to be a little lucky. And good teams have the first two, and they don't get the luck in the right times. We believed there was a higher power involved. We believed it.
The Williamson County Cultural Arts Commission of Franklin, Tennessee wishes to thank our men and women in blue who help us deliver safe and fun family and community cultural events year-round, including one of the only authentic bluegrass festivals in the country. Bluegrass Along the Harpeth takes place every July and at the Williamson County Fair in August and at the annual Tennessee International Independent Film Festival. Check out our full calendar of events at wccac-tn.org.
So then the next season, this is the wake of the tragedy.
There was a common goal.
Common goal. We were of one mind.
It didn't start off that way, though. If you remember the first game, we lost 10-0 to Temple. And in my mind,
10-1. We did score one.
Did we skip one? I don't remember the one, but anyway, in my mind, I got done in building a program. The people, I felt like we had the right people in the right spots. Every year I felt like we were one of the most talented team in that conference year after year after year, and we couldn't get over the hump. And so when we lost 10-1, and it was Temple who we had a couple run-ins before, I remember I just said, I don't know what to do. I had tried everything. Go to the whip, don't go to the whip, play T-ball, have fun, get ready, boom, let's do this, lighten up, the whole thing. And I tell this in speeches now. As much as we want to create environment as coaches, and we want to create this team bond and chemistry, it has to come from the team. It has to come from the players. And the next game when we won, we were behind about the 5th or 6th inning to Penn State. And our Joe Ross was catching, and he took one off the hand. And I knew the coach over there. I knew he was going to try to steal with the guy at first. And I called the pitch out, and Joe threw an and he really hurt his hand, and he was trying to get it going. He could really throw. I call a pitch out. He throws an absolute seed down to second, throws the guy out. All of a sudden, the dugout erupts. And then this goofy thing starts happening. It just came on like a huge tidal wave. Can't remember I don't know who it was that was up, but they took their batting glove out and their pocket stayed out. And then all of a sudden another guy did it. And we got base hit after base hit, double base hit. And it was the team that we had envisioned. It just came together like nothing.
Was that the almighty Opak?
Is that the pocket out? That's the OPOC?
Yeah, the almighty Opak.
We used to freak teams out with Almighty Opak. They had no idea what we were doing. Like, what is Almighty Opak?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
They would chant in the dugout. We were chanting in the dugout. We sound like a bunch of monks.
Almighty Opak. Freaking people out because they had no idea. What are they saying? Why are they saying it?
Yes. Yeah.
Almighty Opak.
And then goofy stuff would start happening.
Yeah, absolutely right, Tommy.
And the other team was convinced.
Yeah. Andrea, I'll give you a quick back. We'll go a little bit forward, but when we're playing Arizona State in the regionals, I can't remember if it was the first inning or second. We get that pocket comes out, base hit. The Gregorian chant starts, Almighty Opak. And I am next to the Arizona State dugout. Now, back then, ragging was a little more, you could rag a little bit more and kind of, do things. And they are screaming at me as I'm coaching third. What are they saying, coach? What are they saying? What are they doing? I mean, it isn't just one guy. There's like 8 of them screaming at me, and I'm like just laughing. And Tommy's right. I do agree. And I'll let Tommy or Clay, because I get way too emotional about the game that put us in the finals. So I'll let you guys go ahead and tell that story.
Well, Clay, feel free to chime in because, like I said, history can get changed on the margins at times. Well, getting back to why I say Warren and Rachel's deaths impacted and created the championship run, because in a long season, there's lots of low points. But that event that happened in early December galvanized to the point of no matter what happens, it's not as bad as what happened to them. Right? So no matter what low point we faced, and there were some low points, Clay can remember the Delaware State trip. We bottomed out at 3-11, lost to an inferior team who was ready for us. We were sideways, and we were 3-11. And there was a lot of anger and frustration, and Coach and I went round and round a few times about it, and we put it behind us at that point. And I got in the vans and said, look, guys, we're 0-0 starting today. Our conference season's still in front of us. Those are the kinds of moments that you get through if you have a reason to. And we were all of one mind. So none of that mattered. What mattered were the conference games and getting in. And of course, as Coach alluded to, we got smacked in the first game. And I had the feeling at times I was saying things that I didn't even come up with. They were just put in my head. And I remember at the beginning trying to come through the losers bracket, and I stood up in front of the guys after we got ready to get off the buses. I said, look, there's a lot of guys on this bus. It might be our last game. And if we get beat, so be it. But we're not going to get beat because we're afraid. We're not going to get beat because we're uptight. Let's just go play. Just go play. And to Coach's story, we got a little lucky and we squeaked by Penn State. We caught Rutgers at the right time because they were probably the most talented team. I think of the 350 pages of that playbook, Believe it or not, girls, we had a 350-page playbook.
No, you didn't. Now you're making stuff up.
All
You know
right,
what?
150 pages.
Only about 50
Every
pages.
scenario, he had thought of every baseball scenario known to man, and we had to play for it.
50 pages.
And I'm saying this, and this is a compliment, Coach.
Yeah.
Because we play Rutgers, and they got upset by Temple, and we caught them flat-footed. And another divine intervention, the guy that gets the ball for us against Rutgers was recruited by Rutgers and was told if he wanted to go to play for a bleeping program, go right ahead. And I just heard this story a month ago. He told me his mother talked to the Rutgers coach before he left to come to GW and said, one of these days, my boy's going to get the ball against you, and he's going to shove it right up your ass. Bobby Gaza's mother told Fred, whatever his name was, Fred Hill. And sure enough, here we are.
Yes.
Bobby Gaza's got the baseball against Rutgers, his senior winner go home game. I mean, who writes that? That doesn't happen. That's divine intervention. And he pitched, of course, the game of his life.
Well, not only that, from a coaching standpoint, it was the single, from a coaching standpoint, an artistic standpoint, for me personally, it was the greatest game in the history of GW baseball. Everything was executed to perfection.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Because of the 150-page playbook, we used 144 pages of it.
It was 50 pages.
We used
it wasn't even
44.
50, 35.
We executed the stuff that we did for hour upon hour, and everybody would complain about it. Rundowns, bunt defenses, first and third defenses, double cut relay, all the minutia that you have to practice. It all came to play in that game, that one game. We did all of it. And we executed it all, like Coach said, flawlessly. And we beat a superior team with the right guy on the mound. And he pitched the whole game.
Even more impressive is that he probably couldn't see home plate because, one, he had those really thick glasses, and two, he was chewing tobacco the whole game. And he would spit, and the spit would just kind of coat the glasses. So by the end of the game, I don't think he could see Joe.
Yeah, and Joe was saying he was throwing harder in the ninth inning than he threw in the first inning.
Yeah, because Bobby's a gamer.
And as crazy as all that sounds, it got crazier after that because all that meant was we had to beat Temple twice. And we're down in the ninth inning against Temple. And literally, the movie script from The Natural, right? Lightning bolts in the right field sky, a spring storm coming. Are we going to get finished before the thunderstorm gets to us? We're down to the ninth inning. This is all factual, unless you guys correct if I'm wrong. They carried the trophy down and put it behind Temple's bench.
Huge mistake.
They were celebrating. We were in the ninth inning at the bottom of the order, and Frank Terry hits one right into the lightning bolt to tie the game. We get a second out. Greg Orlowski, who had hit as a sophomore, hit one home run his whole career to that point, hits one out in the bottom of the ninth, and we walked it off. Back before we knew what walk-offs were called.
Yeah.
But that was a walk-off. And then the rains came.
Yes, it did.
And we have to wait almost 24 hours to play again.
Which worked to our favor.
Yes. And then we're playing on a muddy field, foggy, drizzly, rainy. It gets worse right after the fifth inning when the outfielders couldn't see the ball when it got over the lights. Miserable day. We go back and forth, back and forth. We get into the eighth inning. We're up 9-5. This was when I knew, on a personal note, I knew I was retiring from baseball. I wanted one moment where I thought it was up to me. And I got up in that seventh inning or eighth inning with the bases loaded and hit the 3-run double to clear the bases. And I got to second base. I looked at Coach. He's jumping up and down. You know, his vertical was 12 inches instead of the normal 6. And I knew in my heart of hearts, I was done right then. And then we're into the bottom of the eighth inning. The bases are loaded. Mike Rolfs is pitching again, like the third day in a row. 1 ball, 1 strike, and the umpire walks off and says, we can't do this anymore. There's puddles in the infield. And I start getting in the umpire's face, and Coach grabs me and says, what are you doing? Shut up. It's the best thing that ever happened to us. Let us get out of here and regroup again tomorrow. And that's what we did. So it was 4:00 Tuesday to pick up a game in the bottom of the eighth. This tournament was supposed to be over Sunday afternoon. We're into Tuesday night, still undecided. Mike couldn't lift his arm over his head. I said, Michael, there's nobody else. It's all you. You got to get us 5 outs.
Well, somebody, I can't remember who was pitching. Gino Goldfarb got in there too. And Clay, I don't know, you may remember, but Mike wasn't in the night game when the rain hit. The next day,
he had pitched a complete game against Penn State the day before.
Right. So he had a day and a half rest, right?
Right. Yes, he wasn't pitching in that game though. That was Clay. You might have thrown in that game a little. Did you?
I don't remember. I don't remember who threw in that game.
We were going through the whole staff, and obviously that was the third game of the day that we had played, and we just
and fourth in 2 days.
Yes, and so we let me backtrack just a little bit. When those balls were hit, and Clay and Tommy can tell me I'm nuts, but Frank Terry and Greg Orlowski were two close friends, very close friends of Warren's. I think they were really, and Clay, you can tell me better. He was really tight with Greg and Frank.
Yeah, he was.
So when those two guys hit those balls, it was magical. It was very, very, very magical.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Warren really took those two under his wing and knew that they needed somebody.
Yeah.
And he was that big brother or just somebody that pulled them in. And you're right. They were there for him.
Right.
They channeled him.
Right. So anyway, when we get to that last game and it's raining, our athletic director was chasing Tommy. Besides Tommy, I was grabbing him. I was also chasing our athletic director, who was up on the trailer.
He kicked the door.
He was pounding.
Kicked the door in.
He was pounding the door. We need to finish this game. Now, girls, if you remember that year, the basketball team was 1-29, I believe.
1-27.
1-27. Thank you, Clay.
Yeah, who's counting?
The women's team had only won 7 or 8 games. And you had the new president of the university coming in. And you had a whole new regime coming in at the top who believed in sports and athletics for publicity. So this was a big deal for our athletic department at that time. So as our athletic director, who was a competitor, I mean, I give him that. He's pounding on the door. I grab his belt from the back and I yank him back. And I said, Steve, stop. We need a rest. It has been a long day. We'll be fine. At that point, I had just come to the resolution we're going to win. And I said, we'll be fine. And then, Tommy, we get to the next day. And that's when I'm asking, I say that with not knowing who volunteers to pitch.
Volunteers.
And I didn't know, Tommy, you had talked to him, but Mike goes, Coach, my arm feels good. Of course, I found out years later it didn't, which really kind of ticked me off because he had a pro career and I wouldn't have done that. But he went out and played catch. He goes, I feel great. I feel great. And I said, okay, let's have you finish the game. You sure you can get it? We needed 5 outs, I believe. And there was one hitter on that team named Bobby Higginson, who played in the big leagues for a long time. And they had a guy at first base, and he was up in that, I think it was the 8th inning, and I was scared out of my gourd, boy. And he took a swing, and that was a small park. And he just missed a fly ball and he flew out to center field. And that's when I think I turned to the assistant and I said, we're going to win it. We're done. We're going. And I think the last ground ball went to Greg Orlowski, if I remember right.
Yep.
And
yep.
Appropriately. And rest we dogpiled. And then we went to the regionals. And we didn't play bad in the regionals. We just played some good teams, So very proud of those guys.
There were 8 or 10 things along during the course of the season that you just felt his presence with us and around us. And it's something I've never experienced since. And it just was very, very strange.
That's an amazing story. Wow.
Coach, I know you don't have kids, but tell us about some of the way this has impacted you later in life after you left GW.
I mean, one thing we tried to create when I was there, and this includes the alumni base that we had, was that we were a family, that this family would be forever. And I believed in it because that's what I grew up in. And I went to junior college, and much what Warren did, I worked my way through school and played baseball. So the connection was probably there with him on that, and worked like he had to work. I was small. So I had to prove that I could play at a Division I level. When they found him, a gal from the Washington Post called me to interview me. And the one thing I probably didn't say is he took away two people that would have made this world better.
Amen.
They were on the brink of being the best they were great people. They would have been great representatives for George Washington. They would have had a great family together. They would have had grandkids. They would have been super. And two beautiful people were lost because of one guy that was, and I don't know, whatever, I don't give a crap what your politics is. I know my uncle was a judge. He told me a story. He said, I'll never forget it because it reminded me of this situation. There was a guy that had killed some people, murdered them. I said, what did you do? And this is in the state of Washington, Superior Court judge, one of the brightest guys I've ever met. He said, I looked in his eyes and he had like lifeless eyes, shark eyes. And I'll never forget him saying that. And that's what I picture what this was about. And this was done by a person who had no idea, obviously. He was a feeding machine and he was killing. And obviously that was the way it was. And it's sad. So Jennifer, I'm not sure I'm answering your question. It's hard when we talk about it. It gets emotional for me. I tried to guide these guys the best I could in a very tough situation. And I just remember telling every one of them, this grief is your own grief. I remember saying that. This is your own sorrow. You're going to find a way through this. And every one of you are going to handle it different. And then I remember I can't remember what day it was, but just out of the blue, it hit me. And I went in my office and shut the door and cried for 10 minutes. The only guy that walked by was Ed McKee, and he didn't stop, and he knew why.
Oh, he's a good man. Ed is no stranger to sorrow, as you know.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Coach, I wish I had gotten a chance to know you better when I was there at GW.
Thank you. It's hard, but thank you very much. I'm living in the Cape, so whatever you need.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us and for your stories. And hopefully you can leave some of the grief and the burden here. I know that meeting with folks and telling our stories sometimes helps. So thank you very much. What about you all, Clay and Tom, the impact?
Clay, you alluded to it. I just want to reinforce, the older I get, the more blessed I realize to have Coach Castleberry as my head coach. There's no doubt. And he created something magical there for all of our time there. And I think the time has proven that to be correct. As Clay referred to earlier, we're a pretty close-knit bunch that period of time, from the guys that played in the late 80s at GW, very much like a family. Our kids that have been in different programs, nothing compares to what we have. Now, that being said, has it impacted me as a parent? No doubt. And the best way I can put it is, at my age now, I think I understand what my parents used to tell me about the Kennedy assassination. It was before I was born, but I remember them saying there are going to be certain times in your life that you'll never forget. Some of them will be as a national thing, like 9/11 or the Challenger blowing up when I was in school, major events like that. And then there'll be some personal ones that you'll never, ever forget where you were in the moment it happened. And Warren and Rachel's deaths are that for me. Every December 3rd, 4th, it comes flooding back. I don't want it to ever go away. I promised I would never forget, and I don't want to. We laugh about Elkton being where it is. And I used to get teased a lot being from Elkton. And the guys would say, where's Elkton? It's nowhere. I said, that's the point. And I say that because when I left Elkton as a high school senior, I wasn't sure I was coming home. I was chasing a baseball career and going to school and getting a degree. I had a sister who worked in Washington. My life could have taken a lot of different paths. Warren and Rachel's deaths, I think, had a significant impact on me wanting to come home. I had enough of the city life. I enjoy parts of it, but I can remember telling my wife, because she would come to visit. I said, DC, I think will be a nice place to visit, but I don't ever think I want to live here and I don't want to raise kids here. That was the first impact. And then it's impacted me as a parent. I look back, I would just turn 21 years old when that happened. And I thought, I'm 21. I should know how to live life by now. Well, looking back now at my age now, 21 is a kid. And we were all kids, and I wasn't equipped to handle it. I didn't realize the impact it would have on me. Here we are decades later. And it influences my parenting and my decision making. And where are you going? Who are you going with? Don't put yourself in bad positions. Knowing full well that I don't think Rachael and Warren put themselves in a bad position. I think they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that was something I had to struggle with, that it could have been any of us. It could have been any of us. And why wasn't it me instead of him? And I struggle with that. So I've tried to not scare my kids, but I've tried to give them a healthy respect that there is evil in the world. There are evil people. We don't like to think that. And I don't think there's that many. I think it's a pretty slim minority. There are people who just have no good intentions, and you try not to put yourself in a bad situation. And I've gotten fond of telling my kids, I'm not smarter than you, but I've been around long. I have a thing that you can't possibly have, experience. And I've told them all. They know Warren and Rachel's story in detail. I've told them all as they got old enough to understand, especially as they went off to college. Not to scare them, but to give them a sense of reality. Be aware of your surroundings. Know what you're dealing with. Know who you're dealing with. You don't want to do anything to put yourself in a compromising situation. Just be aware. I'll close with this. I remember that the 2-1 was our hangout. And like I said, I didn't live with other teammates. So I would hang out with my teammates there. And where I lived at 25th and M was about a 7 or 8 block walk. Well, my whole senior year after that happened, I didn't walk it. I sprinted. Because in my psychological thinking was, if they're going to get me, they're going to have to catch me. So I looked like an idiot, I'm sure, at 2:00 in the morning, sprinting down Pennsylvania Avenue, making a right onto 25th Street to get to my townhouse. Those are the kinds of things you don't even realize that changes your behavior and it changes your perspective. And I guess the only way I could put it is this is a moment in time that I'll never forget. I hope I've grown from it and learned from it and can provide valuable experience to others who've gone through it. And I think Coach hit it right on the head. You have to be yourself. You have to grieve the way that individual needs to grieve. There's no right or wrong way to heal. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. And as a society, I don't think we should shame anybody into what's right or wrong way to do that. Whatever's going to keep them mentally healthy is what they need to do. If that means crying in your office for 10 minutes, if that means going and kicking a soccer ball 5,000 times or screaming to the mountaintop, whatever it is, that's what people need to do. That's what I've tried to do with my kids. Clay, you're up.
Yeah, Tom, I definitely remember kind of the behavioral change that came over our team. We didn't let each other leave, go anywhere alone. Those are lessons that we pass on to our kids, but I'm going to flip it a little bit. So the night we found out, I remember, as I said, we went back to the house and kind of had a group session, but I remember it didn't hit me. I'm pretty sure I was in shock, but I never felt I wasn't going to cry. Right. So I remember going upstairs and calling my parents to tell them what happened. And I lost it because I knew how much they worried about me. And I didn't want them to be afraid for me. So all I could do was try to reassure them that I was okay. And When I tell my kids that story, I tell them because I don't want them to have to make that phone call, or I don't want to have to get that phone call about them. And it scares the shit out of them when I tell them the story. But I want them to always, to your point, Tom, be aware, be safe. And nobody should have to go through what we went through. It was gut-wrenching. And for all the good that came of it, I still wish we had them with us.
Agreed. It's what you just said is the first time that anyone has ever said. I had the exact same experience or similar experience. I remember being down in the corner room where we had seen the TV, the news broadcast, and a bunch of the younger players started showing up. And there were two in particular who were younger than I, who looked up to me a lot. And I remember comforting them and reassuring them. And we were all going to go over to the Smith Center. And I went back to my room, which my roommate wasn't present. And I called my mom. And I was apparently so incoherent, and she couldn't tell what was wrong. And she didn't know if something was wrong with me. And I was just so afraid, and I get angry. And to this day, I still get angry when I'm afraid. And I was really afraid, and I didn't think I could take care of my teammates. But yeah, I called my mom.
Yeah. As a parent, that has to be heartbreaking to hear your child going through something like that without your support. But you know what? They didn't have to worry about me. They didn't know it, but they didn't, because I had you guys, Tom, Coach. I had you guys, and we made it through it.
We did all make it through it. That's for sure.
And I'm thankful for that.
All right, Shreems. Well, good. That was great. Wind up with mascara running down my face. Let's do this again soon, fellas. the Vermont's top cop bawling your eyes out on the podcast. That was great. Film at 11.
We won't tell
Film
anybody.
at 11.
Yeah, we won't tell anybody.
Oh, I'm telling everyone. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for sharing your experiences and for showing up and providing this perspective, for creating Warren for our listeners. That's a really beautiful gift. Thank you all for being here, for being the voice for the team. And Jen, also thank you for your contribution, your brilliant questions. And we all shed tears today. Except Tom. I don't think we got any real tears out of you.
He's the Iceman. The Iceman.
We're going to have to figure that out.
He went off camera.
I saw it. Hey, real quick, Andrea, I want to say this. When you build, and Jen's probably done this, if you build a department, when you build a department and they believe in you and they love you and you love them as much, whatever the situation is, you rise above it and you become more unified than ever. And the relationships just get stronger and stronger. And I've never had the chance, because I left kind of quick, but I loved every player I coached. I appreciated, and there were ones that I didn't like, trust me, but I loved them. That's just like you have a bad kid, it's the same. And that's the way I looked at it. They were my children. And I was going to make sure that when they went into the real world, because not all of them were going to get a baseball, they were going to be successful. And when I look back at my group, I am so damn proud. I just want to express that, because I never get the opportunity to do that. And on this side, on the pro side, you don't. It's more of a product than the people. The parents trusted me with them, and I wanted to make sure that their trust was rightfully given to me. So I want to say I love them all. Thank you.
Thanks to audio producer, mixmaster, and sound designer Andy Bill of Submachine Audio. Thanks also to media producer Michael Doherty. And thanks to me, Hero Maker director and producer Andrea Schreeman. Please subscribe to the show where you listen to podcasts and take a moment to rate us. It really helps the podcast grow. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Hero Maker Pod. Want to collaborate or suggest a guest? Please email us at media@theheromakerpodcast.com. The Hero Maker Podcast is a production of Prudent Pictures. Thanks so much for listening. If you or someone you know is connected either personally or as the result of violent crime to Alfredo Prieto, a convicted rapist and killer who lived in and around San Bernardino, California, Arlington, Virginia, and Jamaica, Queens, New York, between the years of 1984 and 1990, we'd like to hear from you. Please email us at info@theheromakerpodcast.com.